for the occasion, and welcome everyone, all the students to the session. I mean, it's a little bit weird. I did so many of those things in live, let's say in the classroom, like as live event, doing like online, having such a, let's say, a hidden vast audience is a little bit strange, but I think we all are gonna get used to it. So thank you very much. I think it's I always enjoy talking to students and tell our experience, and what we do and what we did, with the company. So my name is Dario Mancini, and I've been managing Waze in Italy for the past 4 years. Before that, I was working at Google, the Google Waze at the same teams for the past 15 years across various offices in globally, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Ireland, in Poland, and eventually, unfortunately, I decided to be back in Italy. So the objective of today with Marcello is really to give you an understanding of the history of Waze, what made it successful as a startup, what are the technology that we're using, how do we see the ecosystem, and we are happy obviously to take any questions that you might have while we are presenting or at the end of the presentation. Okay, so I'll let Marcello introduce himself and start with the presentation as well.
Hi everyone, thanks for your time today, and thanks Alejandro for the invite. My name is Marcello. I've been working at Waze for the last year. Before Waze, I was part of the Google team, in the Google search ads and team. And before Google, I had the opportunity to work at Amazon in the retail team. Today, as I was saying, we have prepared a few slides that will tell you a bit more about the history of Waze, what we do and how we operate, especially with a focus on Italy. So I think without further ado, I can share my screen and let's begin with the presentation that we have for you. So today, together, we're going to see a few insights about the story of Waze, when it started, how Waze works, and we're going to tell you a bit more about Waze. Waze is not just a navigation app, it's much more than that. And then at the end, we will see what Waze Ads is and how Waze is actually helping companies with their businesses and improving their performances. The first thing is, what exactly is Waze? Waze is a crowdsourced navigation app, and that's the first difference we have with Google Maps. So Waze is actually using real-time data from our community of drivers to get millions of drivers from one point to another point. One of the main differences that we have with Google Maps is the fact that we are powered by people. So we have an on-the-go community that cooperates and works together in order to provide real-time data and intelligence that can actually help the users, so the drivers, to go from one point to another in the fastest possible way. One of our mission is actually that to outsmart traffic or eliminate traffic altogether. Thanks to the community that we've built over the years, our users are very valuable and very loyal to our app. They use it a lot and every day, not just going to places that they already know, but they do use it every day. And finally, one of the difference that we have respect to Google Maps is the fact that advertisers can use Waze to turn their location into destination for our users. The Waze story history starts in Tel Aviv, Israel, and we're around 2004, 2005, when a young engineer, the guy who's in the picture, our founder, was gifted a cell phone, like one of the first smartphones that we see in this picture. Back then, you could use this smartphone to navigate on the internet, use maps, but that you needed to, every time you wanted to upload new information to the software, you actually needed to use an USB and charge it, and it used to take a lot of times. So our founders started using this device as a GPS navigation software system. And what he quickly realized is that back then, you could use a navigation software just going places that you didn't know how to get there. So the point was, I probably used the GPS once I learned the route. The GPS doesn't give me any other information, any information that is useful. So I won't use it again until the next time I'm going to somewhere where I don't know how to get there. And so one of the things that he quickly realized is that he could actually improve the system and made a GPS navigation more useful for everyday life. If you think about it, back then in 2005, 2004, the only way to actually outsmart the traffic that you had was to use a paper maps. So look where the route that you needed to take. And you did not have any of the information that we have nowadays. So you didn't know where the police was, if there was an accident, if you had to wait in line. And so all those information did not exist. So something that our founder quickly realized is that he could actually improve the system, the GPS system, by providing new and useful information to the users. And one thing that he initially did is, the first thing that he did was mapping out all the location of the speed cameras that were in Israel. And so that was a new information that he could provide it. And the way he did it, it was active on a forum back in the time. And he asked two people active on this forum to use a small piece of code that he had written to take down the location of the speed cameras around Israel. And the response was super good. In just 2 weeks' time, he was able to map out all the speed cameras. So he realized then that this new method of providing information to drivers was actually working. And so that's where the idea of Waze started. So Waze history, it keeps on going. And at that point, after he realized he could actually create a navigation app with crowdsourced information and data, he started building the app, and he built this app which was free. The picture we see here is a picture from the time of when Waze was acquired by Google. In the middle of the picture, we see our founder. The company was officially founded in 2008 in Israel, and then it was bought eventually in 2013 by Google. And the picture we see here is from the time in which the founder were already at Google. If we have to say what are the milestones that Waze was able to accomplish over the year since 2008 up until today, we see that in 2008, the app was officially launched in Israel. Soon after, they opened up offices in the US, which is by definition one of the most important markets that we have. Then decided that Waze was actually like venture capitalists were investing in Waze, and they needed to find a way to actually monetize the app. And so we came up to a solution to input ads within our platform. And so in 2010, ads was launched in Israel. Soon after, the ads product, since it was working, it was one of the few way for companies to reach out to users on the go, driving. So like the radio we know, or the billboard. It started working very well. Therefore, Waze decided to launch the ads business in other countries. Eventually, in 2013, Waze was acquired by Google. And from that point on, a lot of things have changed. New products have been evolved. And Waze is not just the navigation app that we usually think of, but it's much more. For example, in 2015, Waze launched the carpool and so on. Nowadays, we have more than 130 million active monthly active users that provides useful information to our drivers every day. But to the next slide is, how does Waze work? So we've seen what's the story behind how it started. Waze, as I said earlier, it's powered by people. So the community is actually it's the main pillar of our app. We are active in over 185 countries. We have this data that we are seeing here is from 2018. Back then, we had 110 million monthly active users. We have map editors, and we have reports that are building every month. Thanks to all this information and to this powerful people that we have behind that work with us for Waze, we are actually able to create a navigation app which is useful to the drivers, to everyday drivers. The way of information that the community gives to our map it can be divided into the passive contribution. So everyone that is driving using Waze from one point A to point B, it's actually providing for GPS data. Initially, when the app was first launched in Israel, they needed to build the map of all the streets from scratch. And what they did is they asked people to use Waze to go to places they didn't know how to get there. So that if a lot of people were actually driving from one point to another, following the same street, the software developer were actually able to say, okay, if all people are taking this route, there must be a road that connects point A from point B. And so we're actually able to build the map from scratch. And so passive contribution, it's very important. It's whenever people drives and we receive data every minute, every 10 seconds of where they are. Then we have the active reporters, active contribution. If you have used Waze, you know that when you see a traffic jam, when you see a police car, an accident, etc., you're actually able to report that information within the platform. And within a few seconds, all the people that will be using Waze next to your location will be actually able to see those information that you are reporting. And something interesting, there was in the city of, if I'm not mistaken, Boston, it was a study done that actually many times the reporting on Waze regarding accident was faster than the reporting of calls to the police station where the police was needed in order to work with the accident that happened. So that's an interesting fact, I think. Then we have the editors. These are the community that contributes the more in the creation of the Waze and the maps. They actually add new roads. They check that the addresses are correct. They check that the landmarks are correct and the old informations are properly set up. One example that I can give you is Waze. Nowadays, the electric cars are becoming very popular, and Waze is one of the few navigation app that provides users with information where you can actually charge your car, and our community is inputting this information even more, and so it's becoming very relevant for people that drive electric cars. Going forward, something else, it's Waze that does not only provide information to drivers, like it can be me, but it also provides information to city, public entities, road operators, and many times you might have happened to see, especially if you look at a video from the US and so on, that Waze is used in TV shows or TV news in order to look at the traffic, how the traffic is going, how if the roads are blocked, and so on, all of this data. So Waze is not just information for everyday drivers like we can be, but also for cities and public entities. One thing that it's very important to notice as I stated earlier, Waze, it's crowdsourced. So all the information that we received are received by our users. But in the past, we learned from our experience that sometimes we need to double check this data because the data we have are actually monitored, but they're not always correct. We have two pictures here. One on the left is from a lake. And this is famous because in 2018, a guy in Vermont actually decided to follow Waze because he thought that Waze was giving him the right. It ended up into a lake. So that's one example of sometimes they are not always correct. Therefore, we need to monitor the data that we receive from our community. On the right, we see a few titles from journals. These are coming from Israel. A few years ago in Israel, Waze was giving out information that the highway was actually closed, and this caused a massive traffic jam within the city of Tel Aviv. That was actually not true. So we have to pay attention to the data that our community puts into the platform. Once we monitor that, we are sure that we will be able to provide a best-in-class service for our drivers. Going on, I would let Dario talk about this next chart.
Thanks a lot, Marcello. Thanks for the review. So just a quick add-on, which I think are interesting to what Marcello said so far. First of all, I want you guys to think about, what was really like, the innovation of Waze. compared to other, like, technology. I mean, if you want to start a startup, if you think, that technology is making the difference, just try to think, what was the difference for Waze. At the end of the day, I mean, starting a navigation app, like, for example, Google did, but spending, like, billions in buying, like, maps from, when I'm saying maps, I'm saying physical maps from, like, players like Atlas in the past. I mean, it's easy if you're a big company, but the real innovation of Waze was really, like, using people to literally drawing the map while driving, meaning, like, the cost of putting, like, one of the most accurate maps on the world was close to zero, if not, like, of course, the amount of money required to building, like, the center, like, for cloud, etc. But think about it, as a student, or what could be your future, like, the innovation really makes the difference. Point number 2, if people are thinking, like, what is the difference between Waze and Google Maps, and now kind of Waze, like, fits into the Google strategy. Well, first of all, a little bit of an anecdote on the acquisition. I mean, I don't know if everybody knows, but there were 2 last candidates for the acquisition of Waze, and one was Google and the other one was Facebook. Okay. At the end of the day, the original offers, like, was coming from Facebook. As you might imagine, they didn't have, like, any footprint in the maps area, so they were really interested to the app. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a matter of money, because Facebook, I think, was offering more. But Google, like, the founders decided to go with Google because they were granted more flexibilities and the ability to remain, like, and acting and growing, like, the company if there was their own. And that was really what made the difference. So again, I mean, as a student or as a passionate of technology, try to think about those dynamics, how culture is really important to really, like, close deals and for merger in general. The third point is that how this is, like, leading into the Waze role into the Google strategy. So being independent means something, Waze. Well, now we're growing quickly, and I think, we're around 500 people in the company. But up until since I joined, like, in 4 years ago, we were a little bit more than 250 people, I think. So the company almost doubled in the past 4 years. But the thing is that something is trying to innovate in a space, being, like, 250 people, like, very smart and quick and agile engineers, versus being, like, part of a company like Google, who is, like, more than 100,000 people. As much as Google foster a startup culture, of course, I mean, when you're growing as a company, it's difficult to maintain, like, to be agile, and you have to build processes, etc. Instead, Waze has the task of being, let's say, the vanguard of the mobility for Google in general, so that really the big difference with Google Map is that we are really and only dedicated to drivers. Okay, so to people that are driving and to the mobility of driver, versus Google Maps that is more a little bit like, let's Swiss knife, that you can do everything, like, you can walk, you can do bike, you can see, like, whether shops are open or not. So it's a little bit of a different thing. But Waze is really, like, for people that are driving, and in the mobility driving space, it's at the vanguard of the innovation. Alejandro was telling me, that most of you are very interested in artificial intelligence things. And one example of this, which I think, is really kind of giving you the flavor of how it's important to have, like, the community and, like, and the technology. It was really, like, for example, I don't know if you're using Waze, you see that there is the speed limits that we're showing if people are surpassing the speed limits. So imagine that we map globally speed limits in all these 150 more countries that we're using it. Basically, the community start mapping few segments, and then, they basically extrapolate to artificial intelligence a model that was able to expand it to the rest of the country, and then, the community kind of refines. So imagine, like, the the process was like, community, technology, artificial intelligence applied, and then back the community to refine, which I think, should make you think as a student that when we're talking about artificial intelligence, we shouldn't artificial intelligence. We shouldn't really think, of technology only, or things that are completely becoming independent, but more how we should plug in, like, the technology into the human factor. Okay, so just wanted to give you this overall perspective. Then we can go ahead with the slide. So Marcello, if you can go to the next slide. Again, I think we discussed this a little bit already. So we can go to the next. So here, basically, what you see is how Waze has evolved as from an application, like from a navigation app, to create a real ecosystem. So as Marcello was saying at the beginning, and we'll see, like, in details, we are living, like, outside of ads. Okay, so ads is our business model, which is very similar for how Google make monies. But we realized that we were sitting on, like, a big amount of data, and we decided as a monetization not as a monetization strategy, but to grow the ecosystem, not to monetize those data, so not to take those data and selling to other, like, entities, but really, like, to make value of those data for the entire communities and for all the players in the mobility space. Okay, what does it mean? It means, like, that from the navigation app, we started, like, first of all, I mean, if you have a community, you have the opportunity to be global, but having, like, a local flavor. Imagine, like, the Italian community, which is one of the most active on Waze. They worked on specific project, like, mapping, like, taxi lanes, or mapping, like, ZTL for specific access. So mapping, as Marcello was saying, like, the electric infrastructure. So you have the possibility to give really, like, to a global app a local flavor. Then we decided to launch Carpool. So this is, like, was the evolution of our vision, because the original vision was saying, okay, we do have an existing infrastructure for car. People doesn't know how to use the infrastructure intelligently. So again, let's apply technology to make sure that we use the existing infrastructure in the best possible way. On the other hand, the evolution was that if you are looking at what is happening in the future with, like, congestion in big cities that increasing, etc., what you see, like, is that using the existing infrastructure is not going to be enough. So you have to find a way to reduce the infrastructure that we are using. And I know that autonomous car, like, autonomous car and the likes, and mobility as a service are all, like, nice things, but lots of those, they're still far away to happen. So we wanted to, like, to find a way to have an impact on the business, like, on the mobility immediately. That's why we decided to launch Carpool. On the other side, Marcello was quickly anticipating, we decided, like, to have, like, to share data both on the media perspective, so make it available for television, but also, like, for municipalities, like, the city of Rome, for example. But we have, like, more than 1,600 partners globally, touching almost 2 billion people, and where we share basically our data to municipalities. Imagine, like, cities for free, okay, in exchange on those there's data on where they're having, like, roadworks, or if there's like, any change on viability, so that at the end of the day we can give, like, the best possible service to the end users. If I can go to the next slide, Marcello. So again, this is, like, specifically on Carpool. So we decided, to go this strategy. As I was saying, it is a matter of changing our vision from kind of outsmarting the traffic to ending the traffic. I know it's a big, ambitious, like, lofty goal, but really like, the objective of carpool is really like, to get as close as possible. If you see, like, if you think about the infrastructure that you're using, so if you're using Uber, if you're changing, like, the mobility, from carbon mobility to electric mobility, if you're taking, like, mobility as a service, at the end of the day, you are still occupying the same amount of infrastructure. Very same thing with anonymous car. When instead you're talking about, like, carpooling, you're really like reducing the people that are on the street. If you're reading, like, I'm sure, you're fresh of, like, papers on technology. And if you think about, for example, Uber, I was reading, like, in some paper, the traffic in San Francisco due to Uber and it has increased, like, in the past 5 years by 65% or something like that, So that's really like, another way to reduce the impact on infrastructure. And carpool is a way, like, to do it, like, now. Of course, I mean, the pandemic has stopped a little bit, our operation, because of course, having, like, someone with you in the car is not, like, the best thing at the moment. But as soon as the pandemic is gonna end, I think we're gonna resume and see, like, the strong growth that we were seeing, like, in the product. If you can go to the next slide, Marcello, I think we are probably to the next session. I'll leave it back to you.
Thanks, Dario. Thanks, Dario. So for the next slide is more about Waze Ads. So how we help companies reaching out to more potential users and customers thanks to our platform. Because something that we do at Waze is we allow advertisers to put their businesses on the map, meaning that thanks to Waze, companies can reach local drivers nearby their business. And we've seen over the years that actually Waze can help companies gather more navigations toward their store, reach out to more new potential consumers, which eventually lead to more sales. On this slide on the right, we see an example of what it can look like, a campaign that an advertiser can decide to run on our platform. For the way Waze operates, what we do is actually, you see in this picture, there are different kind of advertiser that you can do both digitally, online and offline. On the left, you see what is more standard. So like advertising on papers, on the computer, on the TV, or on your phone. This is all advertising that you see when you're at home, sitting on the sofa, or you're doing something else, but you're actually not on the go. If you think about people driving a car, and the kind of advertising to which you are exposed while you're driving a car, it's usually more analogic. It can be either radio or billboard that you see outside of your window car. And Waze, it's actually a mix. It's a digital platform that allows companies to reach users on the go in a digital way. So imagine the user is driving, it's going to a location, and you're able to showcase to this user your advertiser while it is driving, with all the advantage of the digital advertising, while using a solution that is very similar to the analogic, so radio and billboards. Here it's an example, like the advertising in Waze, it's very similar doing on the radio, we see here on the billboards, and then there's Waze, which is an option that allows you to leverage all the digital informations that we have, all the digital data, in order to better optimize your campaigns. We have at Waze allow you to create, as I said, in-car advertising, and the objective we help companies reach is first one, to build awareness, so increase product awareness, and the second is to drive people into store, something that and we will do more eventually in the next few months. In order to do so, in order to do this, to build awareness and drive store, we have a few products which I would say are fairly simple to explain. The first product is the pin ad, and it's like a store sign. This is what we see here on the left. What's the pin ad? It's the pin. It's the logo of the company that decides to advertise on Waze. In this example, we see Carrefour, Lidl, or Shan. And it tells drivers that are driving that there is a location nearby. Pins are shown to people that drive next to this location. And usually what we see is that it creates a lot of location awareness. Imagine how many times you drove next to a location and you never realized there was actually a store in that place. Waze helps company create location awareness. Our business model is CPM based, in case you're interested. So advertisers do invest for a number of fixed impression and a fixed price. You can decide to click this pin, and once the user clicks it, it provides more information with a clear call to action, which can be drive there. So to answer to our objective to drive more people into store, or save. You can decide to save the offer that the advertiser has in that specific moment. One of the other products that we have are the takeovers. Takeover are like a digital billboard. Here we see an example of a takeover from Volkswagen. Takeover, it's shown to users only where they're not driving, when they come to a complete stop. For two reasons. The most important reason is the fact that we do not want to disturb people that are driving, and we want to avoid to create any incident. And the second reason is that people tend to look more at their phone while they're not driving. Therefore, we're sending a message with a digital billboard in a moment which they are more engaged. And takeover do not appear when you drive next to a store, but they usually appear within a radius from the location, which can be set up together based on the goals that the advertiser has. Again, here the objective can be different. You can decide to set up a takeover to create awareness around the product, or to communicate a promotion, or to drive to store. In this case, we see here it says raggiungi, which means drive there. And the objective is people to clicking the call to action and drive to the car dealership that it's nearby. So that's something that we do. One more products that we have, it's the sponsor search. It's a search ad. A search helps you to be top of mind when consumer browse for businesses like, for in this case, it can be Volkswagen, meaning we help businesses to be found when people open up our app and do search for a specific location. In this case, we see that the person is searching for a concessionaire, and Volkswagen is investing on the pin formats, the first one that we see on top. And as a result, their location comes up first. We also want to be very relevant for our users, just like Google is. So we will only showcase an ad in the search if the keyword that the person is searching is relevant with the results that we are about to show, and if the location is nearby. In this case, in the example, you see that it's very close, but we won't show an ad if the location where the client have to drive, it's like 20, 30 kilometers away. So it needs to be very relevant. Also, what you can see before you actually click navigate to the location, you will see an info page where all the information related to that location will be shown. This is very relevant for a few advertisers, a few that have very specific promotion in store, and they decide to showcase a specific promotion where we see the Golf 8 image, so that people actually see that promotion right before driving into the store. Again, here the call to action is going to be drive there. So these are a few of the formats that our like companies that decide to use Waze can use, and they really help reaching people on the go. Thanks to the digital platform, we provide valuable insights that can be used by companies to then optimize their performances. Something else that we see is the partnership in Italy. That over the years, it's not just about ads, but we have created very different partnership over the year. These are a few examples of partnership that we have done in Italy. For example, Fiat decided to launch a few years ago a Panda, which was all branded by Waze. So it has Waze info system. You could have Waze app navigation app within the car, and it was used to create awareness around the product and awareness not only the product as the car, but the navigation app as well. For example, in Milan, you can use, if you use the car sharing service Enjoy, you can see that from last year, if I'm not mistaken, it's integrated with our app. So once you open up the Enjoy app and you book your car, once the car is unlocked, you will be able to select the destination you want to drive to, staying inside the Enjoy app, but using the Waze navigation app, which is very relevant, and it allows people to outsmart the traffic, especially in big cities like it can be in Milan. And then another example of partnership that we did a few years back is the partnership with Rome, the football team. One of the features we have in Waze is giving potential customers the opportunity to change the voice of the navigation system. Imagine you can, and in this specific case, what we did have was the players of the Roma were actually telling you the direction. So you had the famous football players that were telling you where to go and how to go, and so on. So this was something very, for people that like the team, was something very, very important. In other countries, for example, in the US, you might have the voice of Arnold Schwarzenegger telling you where to go, and so on. I don't know, Dario, if you want to add anything in particular related to the partnership or anecdote that you have of past partnership that we've done.
Well, I mean, the highlight of the partnership with AS Roma is that I had the chance to meet personally Totti. I think that was the super highlight. But in general, I think it's a great opportunity to partner with big brands in Italy, and doing at the end of the day initiatives that are adding value to the end user. In the Fiat case, we integrated the app with the app that is managing the control of the Panda. So for example, I mean, if you're finishing your petrol, you were Waze was showing you where was the closest petrol station. Enjoy, I mean, it goes on its own. I mean, it's giving a navigator, a GPS to Enjoy, and in the app you can really switch from one to another. So it's really, again, adding value. The one with Roma was more I think a branding one, but I think it was very nice to say sometimes to be entertaining as well. So it was very fun to have it in place.
Thanks, Dario. So the next part is, if you have questions for us, we would be happy to answer. So, Andrew, I don't know if you want to lead this part.
Yes, we left 15 minutes, for the question.
So first of all, thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting and actually kind of inspiring to see how Waze went from that kind of startup in Israel to what it's become today, and the innovative approach to crowdsourcing traffic. That was pretty cool to hear. So we do have a Q&A section here with a few questions. If you want me to read them out loud, so you can answer to them. The first one is to Marcello. How do you monitor the people reports? Is there a team that physically checks the reports one by one, or is it automated?
And we have a community of people that inputs data within our platforms. Data are input on a regular basis, and then we have checks that are made if information come up that are misleading, meaning that information if I'm not mistaken, information is not checked manually every time. Like some information flown into the app. I don't know, Dario, if you want to...
Let me jump in. Here what we do is basically a sort of a quality score. So first of all, I mean, map editors, so they have levels. That's incredible. There's a voluntary community, and they have levels. Level 1, they can do some changes up to level 6. So a level 6 map editor can change everything, in the map, in the world, real time. Saying, that in Italy, if I have an issue, I call my let's say my contact real map level 6, and I tell him like, close me this road or open this road, that is that it looks like it's closed. And to normal people that are reporting, there is a quality score. So you have to kind of, because the community is doing some pool of verification, and then you acquire a score, and then therefore, like, your reports become like more and more meaningful, and you have to reach a certain score, like, to be remained. Also, there are people that when passing by are confirming or not confirming. So if, I don't know, a report is confirmed by more people, of course it acquires. So there is like a little bit of, again, as I was saying, is technology, so artificial intelligence plus human beings from one side and another, from at the beginning of the process and at the end of the process.
Okay, yeah, I think that was clear now. There's another one from Davide. How do you deal with the distraction factor of adding buttons for reports and advertising? For instance, how does Waze take responsibility if an accident happens while a driver is making a report?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I mean, of course, I mean, we do take seriously, like, being safe at driving. Okay, that's why, since almost the beginning, it's possible to report on Waze without touching the phone. Okay, so there are some tricks that you can use to report on Waze without touching the phone. We're not encouraging people to touch the phone. Imagine that even our advertising is first of all sold by CPM, meaning that, we're not encouraging people, like, to click. That's why, we're not selling, like, by CPC. And for the advertising specifically, we are only showing ads if people are stopped, so that they're not moving at the moment. Okay, so we're showing takeover only if you are stopped at the traffic lights or in the traffic in general. Now, of course, we are integrating with Google Assistance. It's been launched already, like, in many languages. I think it is coming in Italy quite soon, so that everything is going to be like, on vocal. And before that, so that you don't do everything, and you can just say, like, report an accident, Waze, okay, Waze, report an accident. And of course, we've been integrating Waze with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, meaning that, using those platforms in your car, and we're reaching already, like, a good percentage of usage. You can then, activate it again, with voice or with whatever way, you're activating those two platforms. So to answer the question, this is a very dear theme to our heart, and we're trying to do everything to make sure that people are at drive, like, having like the best and the safest experience as possible.
Right. Okay. There's a couple more. Davide also wants to know, what if one wants to use Waze's utilities to develop some application? Do you provide any APIs? This is, since we have a technical community, software developers, computer scientists, I guess we're interested in, consuming Waze's.
Yeah. So as I was saying, we made a decision as a company to not selling data, at least, so up until now, but to give them for free, so without making money. So as I was saying, for example, we exchange data with Enjoy, and we have an SDK, which is of course a more sophisticated, like, but it's basically an API to, like, to go from one app to another. And we used to offer, like, API to similar partners, to say you don't need to build, like, an app, but just integrate our data if you are thinking of doing, like, because of course you're never going to be able to reach the scale that we have. Okay. Right. So as a general, I mean, I'm not a big fan of building new apps that nobody's going to be using, but you just need, like, to kind of connect dots of apps that are already established themselves, like, as a top player. On the other hand, the fact that we're making this for free, we were not able to build, let's say, a strong team around it as a, let's say, as a company vision. So there's a small team that is working on it globally, and that's why we are restricting this kind of data sharing only to few players. So we are literally going, like, with cities, with the emergencies team, and like players like FCA or or enjoy in this case. So we're being like, very, very specific. Maybe in the future, we're going to be able to expand to everyone, but that's not the case at the moment.
Right. Okay. How do you deal with the fact that the report is done while the user is maybe moving? The speed camera might be even a kilometer before if the car is moving fast and the user is not fast enough to report.
But I mean, that's an interesting question, that I also, to be honest, I've questioned myself so many times while using the app, because if you are a user of the app, you'll notice that you really find, when you said like, the car that is stopped there, it's really there. When you see like, the speed trap, it is really there, and it's not that it's there like, every day, but it maybe like, it was reported an hour ago. And this is happening because there is an iteration of people that are able, like, the first that is kind of sending the report, and then there is confirming. So when you start aggregating data and the movements and applying some data in terms, of how fast you're going, etc., and so you're applying technology there, you're really able to almost pinpoint the location of where it is, like, the report.
Mm-hmm.
Notice it, if you're using the app, you'll see that is extremely, extremely precise. I was even myself, I was always kind of incredibly surprised on how precise it was, the app, in terms of getting the location. And again, this is down like, technology and human interaction. So I think, for all of you guys, if you want to really take a lesson from the small chat that we have today, is really like, that technology is an enabler that needs also like, to cross-check with human interaction and make sure it's really like, giving the best precision in that case. At least, that's what worked for us. I'm not saying that it should be the model, I mean, that you should use for your own startup, for your own future. I'm sure, you're gonna probably be a CEO soon and hire all of us. We're gonna remind of this talk, if you happen to be in that position soon. I'm gonna be very happy to work for you. But that's, I think, the lesson that I got, from my 20 years of experience in the technology business.
Yeah, we do have a great community of students that are all into technology, into business, into startups, and for sure, lots of them would like to build either an app or work on machine learning, artificial intelligence, web development as well. So maybe in the future, some of us will be building applications, or will be joining one of these established ones that you mentioned. About the reporting, I have used the Waze app in many occasions. It was very useful in the US because the police cars were sitting on the sides of the road more often than they do here in Europe. And it was incredible how precise that was, especially if you weren't the first one to report it. If there were people that had already reported, a moving radar, you would go through it and you would see it right away. You would report it. So it does work in a very efficient way. Just one more there is here. Why, if Waze is very focused on the automotive transportation, is not used by Google Assistant when I ask to go to a specific place? I'm not sure if I
think, that's related to it is not, I think, pre-installed in so probably Google Assistant, I think, is going to Maps at the beginning, probably expand soon to Waze as well. So I think, it's so I don't have exact date, but I think, they're going to expand this on Waze.
Okay, good to know. Okay, one more. Sorry for insisting. So basically, I cannot have an application that, through an API called to Waze, can provide my users with the estimated time necessary to drive to a certain place. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct for the moment. So it used to be possible, to be honest. Again, as I would say, we had to restrict the service to fewer players for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So probably it might it might get back in the future, but not at the moment.
Okay, so hopefully that's answered, Davide.
Thanks, Davide. No, but it's good to insist. You know, I mean, at your age, you have to insist as much as possible.
I mean,
insisting is the only way to grow. So
it just
good for doing that.
It shows the interest of our students in, you know, trying to consume the services and trying to get involved one way or another with the content that we present here. I think this will be it. There are no more questions. The presentation was great. We got to learn a bunch of new things, especially about the story of Waze and how it works. Thank you, Marcello, and thank you, Dario. I don't know if you guys want to add a few final words.
Oh, just thank everyone. I mean, for the attention. I mean, it's been a pleasure, and that's it from my side. I don't know, Marcello, if you want to thank.
Same here. Thank you for your time. It was a pleasure, and thanks for the invite.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Waze, and thank you to all the students that joined us today. We'll be posting the recording soon.
Have a nice evening. Bye-bye. Ciao.